And we do have quorum. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes. Okay. Hey, Ray. Okay, tell you what, it is 7:02. Why don't we go ahead and call the meeting to order? Allison, you see everyone on your screen?
Yep, we're all set.
Okay, thank you. First item of business is the approval of minutes from the meeting of January 3rd. Do we have a motion on that?
So move.
A second?
Second.
Thanks, Jeff. Okay, any discussion, corrections, additions to the minutes? All right, all in favor? Any oppositions or abstentions? Okay, thank you, everyone. All right, pretty much our entirety of our meeting tonight is to get our list of proposals recommended to, or the list of recommendations, the proposals that we will be setting forth on the meeting on February 7th. I think there have been a couple of new wrinkles, shall I say, to our discussion, which I had set forth in the email last week. But just as a recap, the Department of Treasury has put forth its final rule. Up till now, we had been working on that 131-page document of the interim final rule. The final rule is probably about 3 or 4 times that size, but they did do a very helpful summary for the final rule that was submitted by the Department of Treasury, which I had attached to the email for all of you as well. The summary really had everything we needed, and it was a good, concise review of all of the allowables and non-allowables for the ARPA funds. Not a great deal had changed. I highlighted a lot of the change, but the biggest change that we did have, which might significantly factor into the proposal selection, is the lost revenue section. With that, the Treasury went from the calculation, up till that point, I should say, lost revenue was determined by a calculation set forth in the interim final rule. With that, Marcia Marion, our controller, had determined that Brookfield could claim 1.9 in lost revenue. That meant that the $1.9 million could be used for general operating expenses within the town itself and did not have to follow other allowable uses for ARPA. In addition to allowing that calculation, the final rule has said that you can claim a $10 million allowance. In other words, don't do the calculation. You have 2 options. You can do the calculation or claim a $10 million allowance or the totality of your grant, whichever is less. So for all intents and purposes, since our grant was $5,026,129.60, that meant that the entirety of it can be used as lost revenue and put into the town operating funds. Yes.
Would that then relieve the town from following the guidelines for the use of those funds?
Yes, it would.
Okay, good.
Yes, it would. But that also means that they could use it for nothing that we have recommended as well. With the discussion.
I asked that question with the thought in mind of the further ruling in that document that stipends or incentive, whatever the term we were using for our volunteer firemen were not allowable. Whereas if this now, we move all of the funds or the majority of the funds to the town could in fact make that disposition of funds to the volunteer firemen.
They could.
Is
They
that
could. That can be part of our discussion, definitely.
Yeah.
But with the back and forth with Marcia and Tara Carr, when Marcia actually gave the final, forwarded the final rule to us, I had said that our intention was to continue with this meeting and to continue to determine the proposals that we felt most vital to the town, and unless informed otherwise, would still plan on giving the presentation of our recommendations at the February 7th meeting. And I have heard nothing to the contrary for that. So my intention is just to continue with this. The town may choose to take a different direction with all of the funds now, but I think we have done a tremendous amount of work. We have gotten proposals from organizations and committees and departments and surveyed the public. And I think it is only right that we continue with all due diligence through the presentation. I'd like to get everyone's thoughts on that, though.
I agree.
I agree.
Yeah, Colette, I feel that, everything we were doing is always going to be in the form of recommendations regardless. And the town was always free to do what they see fit. Knowing that they could apply it the way that you mentioned doesn't personally change my feelings on what we recommend.
Okay. Great. All right, then. So going forth to the proposal discussions, I have reached out. We had questions regarding some of them. And I reached out to some individuals, and some individuals actually reached out to me in regards to the proposals as well. So I just wanted to give some updates before we jumped into the discussions. The first was, and I emailed you all probably a day or two after our last meeting, my discussion with Ellen Melville regarding to what we call the resident grants. And I'd said, I was going to go and get a feel for that. Do you all get that email, recollect that email? Because it was probably about 3 weeks ago now. But essentially she said, there's in this, I guess I was unaware of the client that the social services works with generally have to qualify for the social service assistance. And those that do, she said, have all gotten all of their housing assistance and everything they need. And there is state and federal funding for that for at least the foreseeable future. She said that if it was extended to outside of those that qualify for social service assistance, it's possible, but it is also beyond their manpower at this time. They've been stretched really thin with what they do. Mm-hmm. So that does not negate it. She brought it back to the proposals I thought were most, pertinent to the town are the ones I brought forth. So she says, not going to negate it, but they don't have the manpower for right now. So that would have to figure into it. So that was the discussion I had with Ellen. Then I did reach out to Dr. Sullivan in regards to the public health nurse, because there was a question about that as well. Because the proposal was for a public health nurse for 2 years. And, there was just an announcement of one. I asked if it would be additional hours or if that is the position. He said that was the position that was under the proposal, but the nurse that the position they have now is under a grant that is will expire soon, and they're not sure they're going to get another grant. So he said that as of March, that position will no longer have the funding to go forward. So really, this proposal would be to continue the funding for that public health nurse that's there right now, that just started last month, I think. Then I had a discussion. Mary Knox from Park and Rec reached out to me asking about the proposals that she had submitted because she noticed that none of them were really moved forward to a formal evaluation. And she was asking why, and I was explaining the rationale that if we felt it wasn't going to meet ARPA guidelines or regulations, or if it was not viable to be discussed final, we, in the effort of streamlining as much as we can, we just didn't move it forward. She had very much asked that we reconsider the study for the first idea that they had is regards to a study for planning purposes for the Park and Recs going forward. She said it hasn't been done in a while. COVID has changed everything about the direction, and she really thinks that funding would be critical to form what Park and Recs does over the next decade, probably, because she believes that a lot of that is going to have changed with the pandemic. So we can discuss that later, but I'm just trying to bring forth all the discussions. And then Joanne Hunter reached out to me in regards to the mosaic, was asking if they needed anything else with that. I said we didn't have an amount. She said that they recently did an outdoor one that was smaller than that for about 28,000. So it would probably be in excess of 28,000. One thing that I was not aware of is that project would even be contingent upon them, and I should have been aware of this, getting permission from, is it state or federal, to use the underpass wall as it was, because this is just an idea, and that would need that type of funding or approval to go forward. So those were discussions I've had since our last meeting, just as they figure into our discussions tonight. I did send you all the chart that has the compiled data of both the COVID score, the total score, and then how we ranked it. And then as we talked about, we put it forth in I put it forth in a scattergram chart. I'm going to attempt to share this right now. Please bear with me because, again, it sometimes takes a while for me to get it. And we're not. Hold on a sec. Yeah. I am the worst screen sharer in the world, just so you know. I have it open and it's just not. No, it's not what I want. All right, guys, I'm so sorry. Please bear with me for 1 second. I had it open and I had it here. All right. Are you guys seeing this now?
Yes.
All right. So here is the scatter chart that was compiled. The small business grant is hiding behind the behavioral health right here. But it's a good representation of where we ranked everything. Obviously, the ones over here are high in a total score and high in the COVID score, and down here are your lowest. But it just gives us an idea as to how our rankings matched with that. it's a good basis for our discussion. It doesn't have to be the only basis for our discussion. As we talked about while we were, while we were developing this evaluation tool, is that we may, after doing all the evaluations and rankings, find some grants that didn't rank high on the evaluation that we still feel critical in moving forward. But it certainly gives us a basis for discussion for that.
It's interesting when you look at the graph, the stuff on that top right is kind of separated pretty solidly from the other stuff, even in the middle.
Yeah.
It really, they're all bundled in a little core grouping, and then you got a pretty big white space between that and the rest.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
But it is interesting to note that, those that to the right are the ones that did have the high COVID score, and those that are up on top are those that, had the high total score. So,
Well, they almost seem to be one and the same.
Yeah, there is a big correlation, isn't there?
yes, definitely. So we can start this as a basis for our discussion. I'm going to stop the share for a minute so I can see everyone. There's a couple of different ways we can do this. I would like to definitely do, our due diligence on this. We can go through every grant and discuss it. We already have rated them as far as what we thought were priorities. But we can go forth, discuss each one again, see if we feel it should go forth on our recommendations, or whether we're not quite ready to put it there yet. Is everyone okay with that method, or does someone?
Can we start with the stuff on the top right of that graph?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because those would be the ones that would be the obvious highest potential choice. So might as well
Right.
start with them and in a re-review and then see where we are.
Okay. So what I'm going to do, instead of showing that graph, if you guys can pull that up, because I'm expanding the limits of what I can do here. All right. So I pulled all of these others into a chart here, which has not only the grants, but it has the cost as well. It has our total scores and what each of us did as far as the 1, 2, and 3 ranking. So we can go do this because, in all honesty, all of them in the top right are pretty much number 9 on up. But this gives us the cost to go with as well.
It's interesting. Colette?
What's that, Frank?
If you look at this chart, which I found very interesting to work with, and you look at the top ratings in the number 1 column, there are 7. In other words, everything 11, 9, 11, 10, 8, using 8 as the lower element, there are 7. And then if we look at the second column and use 8 down to 5, we have 6. And then if we look at the third column and use that, we have 6 in that column. So it's interesting how they fall into place pretty easily when you combine the 2 modes of measurement. The 50 rate scale, 50-point scale, and the 10-point scale.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Okay.
so in other words, the number 1 rated elements, I haven't correlated it to your scattergram, but I suspect they're probably the same. the Brookfield Fire Department, the small business grants, behavioral health care management, whatever this is, the residential grant program, the YMCA, the Brookfield Library, the rooftop air handling.
Yep, they are all right there.
Well, as I said, it seems like we've already done the the allocation between our highest priority, our middle ground, and our lowest priority. I think we've already done that.
Yep, I agree.
So what do we need to do beyond that?
Well, I still think we need to discuss it, make sure these are the ones we want to bring forth, how many we want to bring forth. And if there's any others, we've discussed this too, that there may be some that we consider critical to the town that for one reason or another did not have a high ranking in one category or the other. So I think we really do just need to talk through them and to see if this is what we want.
So Colette, just for grins here, if you were to go down that list in that order, how much money are we carrying forward, and where would you draw the line if you use up that money?
Well, technically, if you see down here at the bottom, this is the total of the funds without the Still River Greenway Mosaic and the Museum and Historical Society, without 50,000 more, because I put an estimate there. The Google Charts didn't sum it up with everything else. So it would be 5,288,000, or almost that.
Almost what the grant is.
Almost what the grant is, although we're fully cognizant that they're not that much. All of the grant is not going to go to these funds. Before the final rule came out, we were talking about 3.1 million because we knew that 1.9 was going to be diverted to general operating funds. So we can recommend as many.
Where is the line at 3.1 million?
Well, 3.1 million would be
on line 14.
line 14. Thank you.
No, because if you add
The
that
top
1.5,
five is just north.
when you add the 1.5 million, that puts us up to 3.2. So we have a lot of, and I don't think the food pantry expansion, it didn't have full set of plans. I don't think that was seriously considered. So we get up to line 14, and then we still have room to add other grants at that point.
Right.
Just, Colette,
Yes.
it seems to me to take 1.9 million off the top is not consistent with what we've been asked to do. I would suggest that we recommend all of these if we decide to, and not be constrained by the 1.9. Our thought is we've looked at all of these proposals. They happen to pretty much in the aggregate match what the total allocation is to the town. And this is input to the Board of Selectmen. They may say, fine, thank you very much for your recommendations. We hadn't thought about that, or we hadn't thought about this, but these are your best thoughts. And again, not be constrained by the high probability that in fact they'll take the 1.9, or the higher probability that they'll take the whole amount under the $10 million allowance. But again, I think our purpose is to inform the Board of Selectmen as to what our thinking is, not be constrained by how many dollars are or are not available. Now, obviously, there's a silly side to that. I don't think we should submit recommendations that aggregate to $50 million, because that doesn't make any sense at all.
I agree
I-
completely with that personally.
Huh?
Yeah,
I completely
do
agree
too.
with Frank.
I do too. I was actually only asking my question earlier to just get context, but I think we ought to carry them all forward. But we ought to do it in a priority order. So I guess the question we ought to be looking at is, okay, is that list in the order we want it in?
That was my question is everybody comfortable with the ranking as it is now, or does anybody think there's anything that should be moved forward or backwards on the list? Because I agree, when we submit the whole list, and we're going to say they're ranked in order of our recommendation based on the tool we created, which measures in the way we measured it.
Right.
So if everybody's comfortable with it, there we are. But if somebody wants to talk about moving something forward or backwards, that's probably now is the time, I think.
Yeah, and I think we're answering the question that I was having as we were talking about this, and basically it comes down to how do we want to present this, right? And I think we've started to answer that question potentially, if everybody's in agreement. This would be, as Frank had alluded to, everybody started sort of alluding to the idea that we present it as, here's our list of priorities. If in fact this is the way we want to prioritize them, here are some dollar amounts that are associated with them. Of course, the idea is that they may give partial money to some of these things. They may approve part of the proposal. They may dismiss it. All of those things that's beyond our scope. I agree, but that we're recommending these. We see these as top priorities. We see as, in terms of needs related to COVID, in terms of needs related specifically to recovering from COVID. This is where we as a group, using the methodology that we came up with, discovered a list of priorities and based on proposals and some of our own ideas and so forth.
Yep.
Hey, Colette, I think what we're sort of changing the rules from the beginning when we set up the committees, where we really, at least I remember it, where we said we were really going to try to go with, I'll even use the number, say 10. I mean, I'm not real comfortable proposing some on the lower half of the list just because we gave them, consideration, but we didn't think they were going to either pass mustard, or we, as a group, we didn't really think they really belonged in the top 10, our top 10. So I'd rather go with a proposal where we make proposals saying this is our recommendation, and say it's approximately $3 million worth of grants. The town's going to do what the town's going to do. But I'd really like to give a little more weight to the proposals we really think are very important to the town.
That actually was along my way of thinking. I'm happy to go with what the group, how the committee wants to go. But I want all of the proposals that we put forth to be taken with the utmost seriousness and consideration.
I think
So
maybe,
I think we
maybe
need
you
to
could
fully
submit
stand
them.
behind those. I'm sorry?
I think maybe you could submit them, but you could say, look, here's, if we have 20 proposals, I'll just throw out a number. Here's the 10 we think that deserve the most pressing needs. These other 10 proposals are areas of need in the town, but they're not as, they're not as urgent. I don't want to say as urgent. I mean, they're all urgent, but we can't, we got so many proposals. We can't fund everything. The town can't fund everything. And my fear is that if we give them all these proposals, they might just throw their hands up and say, well, we're just going to do what we wanted with the money, because some of these proposals are just so far off their ideas or boards, that they're going to just poo-poo the whole thing and just throw it out with the bathwater. And I'd rather see at least the 10 of those top proposals get some serious consideration.
Again, if we look at what our charter was and still is to assess the needs in the community as reported by the community, and evaluate those using a criterion which I think was valid. And I think we would be doing a disservice to the public if we didn't present the total of what the community was asking. Our rating system per se says that some of those are really somewhat lacking in merit. And as I said, our ranking system says that. And I don't think, I think we would be doing a disservice to the people that responded to our request for proposals. And I think we'd be doing a disservice to the selectmen, and I think we'd be doing a disservice to the community. This is the total of what the community thought they needed or wanted or thought would be a judicious use of those funds. We have evaluated those. Some we think have enormous merit, and some we think are very much lacking in merit. But to arbitrarily prune all of that information, I think would be a violation of what our charter is.
But I don't think these are mutually exclusive, right?
Yeah, I feel like you're making the same argument.
We could show them all in a ranked and priority order and then tell them we strongly recommend you carry these forward. Right. And that's an easy presentation to build. You don't make things disappear, but at the same time, you have an opinion.
Right, of course.
Now, Jim had talked about what's important to the town. And the thing is, some of the things on this list that are important to the town score very low on COVID relationship. I think the sewer for the Brookfield market area is very important, and it gets a relatively high score, but it's found near zero as far as COVID relationship.
That is one that I was going to bring forth for consideration as well. It bottomed out because of the COVID score and because of the breadth of, it scored high on critical need and lasting influence, but it scored low on the total score because of the breadth of impact and then the COVID, but is very vital to the vitality of that area. So I agree, Jeff, that's why I think we need to go through all the proposals and discuss them as well, instead of just saying, this is our rating, this is our ranking, let's go with it.
The only thing I would add to that, I hear what you're saying. My only feeling is, though, if something was such a critical need for the town, then we as a town should be taking care of that. This is about COVID relief and COVID recovery, as prioritized as COVID recovery. So, I'm not opposed to or diminishing the need for what, so all of these things, present. But, geez, if it's something that the town really needs, well, the town should be taking care of that.
Colette?
Yeah.
Let me see if I can really focus in on this. I think what you're asking, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that we rethink everything that we've already done.
Nope, not at all.
No. Well, why would we review all the different proposals?
I would say just discuss, not rethink. I will just remind everyone that when we developed the evaluation tool and did it, our thought behind it was, we're going to do this, but it's not going to be our only consideration. It's going to be a valuable tool as to our thought, but it's not going to be our only consideration.
Right. But I think our discussion, though, as we went through each one of these proposals, really picked up on all of that. Again, forgive me if I'm hearing that what you want to do is just rethink all of this.
No, I just want to make sure we've given due diligence to everything in the ranking and our recommendations. I take very seriously, the recommendations we go, and we have some really great proposals here. I want to make sure are listened to and heard. So I want to make sure those are the most important ones that are listened to and heard. That's all.
Colette, another way to do that, to do the re-review, if you would be to take the rank order list that you had on the screen, start at the top and go down them and ask the very simple question: is anybody have an opinion that we should move this up or down on the list? Right.
That's exactly what I was going to do. But I just wanted to.
And if nobody has a pressing need to advocate up and down, we move on to the next one.
Right.
We could get through that really fast.
So I guess, Frank, it wasn't a discussion of each proposal, but just exactly that. I just want to go through each one.
And just
If I
ask
may
the question that
suggest-
if we're gonna show them all, why not, all we're talking about is where does it fall on the list?
Right.
And then the last question is, and where are we gonna draw the line on our recommendation to them? And then I think that our work is pretty solid.
Is done. Henry, I'm sorry, did you say something?
Yes, I think what we're faced with is two buckets of money. And it all depends on the rules that are being applied. It's either the 3.1 million or 5.1 million. I would appreciate just drawing a line as to, in the total as you have now, draw the line as to who makes it into category one under the $3.1 million bucket and who makes it under the $5.1 million bucket. And then I think we should give consideration to some of the minor or small projects that may be moved up or down in the category because there's so little money. Like for instance, the Brookfield Library, so little money, but I think from the viewpoint of community benefit, it's a good one.
Right. Okay. So if we do this again. All right. And let's just do exactly what we had talked about doing, and we'll just kind of go through each one. So first one, Brookfield Fire Department, all companies, all proposals, except the stipends. Is everyone good where that is?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
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 All right. Small business grants.
Yes.
yes,
Yes.
Yep.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, and I'm looking at the chart now and not you all. So if you could just please say yes, or let's talk about this, then I'll switch back to the big screen, okay? Behavioral health case management,
yes,
Yes.
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 That's fine.
all right, stipends for Brookfield Fire Department,
Yes.
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 Colette, does that number change now because they can only go to the EMTs and not to the volunteers?
well, and that's exactly what Frank had said, allowable uses of the ARPA funds would tell you that volunteers cannot get stipends. But now that literally all of this can go into used for general operating expenses of the town, they could do that. They could add the volunteer fire department with it.
Does the town still have to abide by the treasury rules though on how they spend that money? Because I know they still can't, even on that 10, if they were up to 10 million, I still don't think they can spend it on pensions and stuff like that. I believe, or I could be mistaken.
They can't spend it on the non-allowable uses. So they can't use it to retire town debt, use it for the general fund or the rainy day fund, and use it for legal expenses and for the pension fund. You're right. Other than that, they have very large leeway into using it for anything within the general operating budget. So they could add that to the general operating budget of the volunteer fire department.
Oh, okay, because I just thought from what the email you sent out, it sounded like that the stipends couldn't go to the volunteer fire department, period.
They cannot go to the volunteer fire department under allowable uses for ARPA, but they could go to the volunteer fire department, my understanding, if the money was in the just used as a general operating fund of the town.
Okay, great. That's fantastic. All in favor?
Okay. All right. So that is the,
If you look at that, the stipends only, the rating of that was 6 on the number 1 column.
right. Okay.
So if you look at the higher priorities, that isn't the highest priority, but anyhow, we'll see that as we go down.
Okay.
Got
So
it.
you're saying that there are a few others that were rated higher as a higher number 1 priority than that.
Right, there are 7 others.
Right.
And I, I wasn't here when we did the discussion on this item because I kind of joined mid-flight. but I just thinking, looking back and giving stipends to people versus running a residential grant program and a YMCA membership, those are broader reaching, and they feel better or more right to me than giving stipends, because people, took a lot of stress. So to me, I think the stipends thing is too high here.
Or too high?
It's too high on the list. Yeah, I'd move it down.
Are you talking where it is in terms of it's on line 4 or 5?
Yeah, it's on line 5 on the spreadsheet, and I'd move it down. I'm not sure exactly how far down, but certainly below the next 2.
But again, I don't think that the listing on the far left, 1 through 24, has anything to do with, other than listing 24 proposals. I think the critical column is the rating 1, and their score is 6, 3, and 1. Moving it on that list of 24 has nothing to do with the value of the proposal itself.
Well, wait a second. I thought that these were listed in the same order as the scattergram.
These are listed in the addresses COVID score first. And then I have the total score here. This is not an exact listing of the scattergram because it's hard to say which one. So
Okay.
You're looking at a compiling of everything. It's in
So
descending
how are
order.
these sorted? They're sorted by the COVID score?
I'd do COVID score. Yeah.
Okay.
I took the
And then-
COVID score first, then the total score, and then we have this. So they're not
Okay.
ranked. I would have had to figure out some other formula to rank them otherwise, which is why I wanted everyone to look at this and see where we wanted to place it all.
But they're definitely not randomly listed.
They're not randomly listed. They're
Yeah,
listed starting with the COVID score.
Yeah.
Yes. So to Frank, I think Frank and Bob are actually saying the exact same thing. That
are.
it
We are.
got a high score in regards to the addresses COVID. But if you look at the total score, there were many that scored higher. And if you look at our ranking score, there were many that scored higher.
Right. That's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah.
Which is why I would say move it from line 5 down a couple, right? And I'd put the resident grant program and the YMCA memberships ahead of that in a nanosecond.
But then
Yeah.
wouldn't you wind up with everyone that's rated 11, everyone that's rated 10, everyone that's rated 9 going down the list?
But I didn't do that based strictly on one column of numbers here. I just
Right.
was just
But
not feeling
again-
about the item. It's my feeling about the item and staring a little bit at the numbers. So
Well, again, the tyranny of the logic is, you can't do it 3 ways where they're somewhat contradictory. If you want to move that, I don't mind moving it, but if you're going to move it, the logic is not on your sense of the value of the proposal, and you're talking about mathematical numbers here, then move it on the basis of, as I said, the top ones are 11, 11, 11, then 10, 10, then 9, 9, 8, 8, 8, and ultimately wherever 6 shows up, that's where it shows up. And it would
Right.
probably be down around 15.
I don't think
So
so.
I feel like if we are going to start talking about moving these all around, even though we've scored them in 3 different ways by now, then we do need to talk about them again. I don't think we
Yes.
can arbitrarily decide to move them, even though we've rated them in 3 different ways.
I agree. I agree with that as well. I mean, some of these are the difference between one person giving it a 1 and one person giving it a 2. So I think
Right.
it all merits a little bit of discussion as to where we want to move it. All right, so we're all in agreement that the stipends should be moved down, correct?
I would respectfully disagree, but that's my 2 cents.
Why don't you just highlight that one as an item that needs discussing? Just put it in a color or something, and
Yeah,
let's keep going down the list and come back to the ones that need talking about. So
yeah. Hold on a minute here.
Use the little paint bucket there next to the A font.
Got it,
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, resident grant program.
Okay with that one.
Yes.
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 Everyone,
Yeah, yes.
okay. YMCA stipend,
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Although it's a membership.
oh, it is a
Because we got-
membership.
That's
That's
a
because-
new thing. You have a membership with memes.
I was gonna say, that's because you gotta be cute and witty when you talk about it.
Colette, I think there's a middle ground here. Can I suggest that?
Sure,
I think rather than trying to manipulate the configuration and administration of this data, which is largely mathematical, why don't we address the issue of what we think our highest priorities are narratively? In other words, we'll submit a commentary on this table and just say that our highest priorities are thus and so. So the very simple solution.
I'm not getting what you're proposing, Frank.
What I'm saying is, rather than taking this chart and trying to reconfigure it, other than the way it's configured now, which is logical, I think a better way would be to leave this pretty much as it is, and then cover our whatever comments we want to make on specific proposals. These are our highest priority proposals. We do that narratively in words.
Yes, well, I plan on, when we're presenting it, to do that. But we do have to have the first bucket that we feel are the highest price, and go from there. So we're just right now talking about each one and see if it relatively fits where we want it to. So library,
Yes.
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 Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
okay. Still River Greenway design,
Yes.
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 Colette, I will let the group know that the town got turned down for one grant. And there's supposedly we're supposed to hear tomorrow about another grant. So this might be a moot point anyway if we get the grant, but I'm definitely in favor of it.
okay. I thought the grant was not for design though, but the grant was for the construction. And they were
No,
just
it
having,
was going to be for the design phase of it.
okay. All right. So that from the way it was written, that they were not able to get grants for the design, but okay. So you were turned down with one. If you get the other one, then this would be a moot point, is what you're
There's
saying.
2 more grants still outstanding, and one of them, I just texted Greg Dabrowski before the meeting, and I was hoping we would have known today, but so either way, I would leave it in there without a doubt.
Okay, fair enough. The rooftop air handling.
Yes.
I actually wonder if this one shouldn't be moved up from a priority standpoint. When you
Certainly is
think about,
necessary.
yeah, and when you think about the importance of ventilation.
Yeah, it certainly is necessary for air quality.
It ranked pretty high in the numerical score too. If you it's a little lower on the COVID score because that's how you rank this, but 42.7 is one of the higher ones.
Yeah. Are you guys good just highlighting this right now and then
Yeah.
going through it again?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Public health nurse.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
Building condition study.
Yes.
I think that's
Yes.
important too.
Yeah.
Pocket Park sculpture.
I have a problem with that in that we initially talked about a certain percentage for the arts. And I think it was like 1%, so that's like $50,000 if you take the whole 5 million. So it's not very much. And there are other artsy things in here, like the Playhouse or the Craft Center, that are, to me, the pocket park's going to be there whether the sculpture is there or not. And they can probably look for a grant in the future to put a sculpture there. But some of the other arts facilities in town have real needs right now. And I know this is rated ahead of those, but I would rather see us give money to the Craft Center or the Playhouse.
Yeah, I think just from a practical standpoint, I guess you could say form follows function, and this is more an aesthetic piece rather than anything that serves a truly practical, utility. So I think that we should probably prioritize things that serve utility rather than things that just have an aesthetic value. Not to say that there's not a significance to have, a nice aesthetic value to the town, but I just think, when you're dealing with a limited supply of funds, it should probably prioritize things that will have an immediate impact on people.
Well said, I agree.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts?
Also talking with Greg Dombrowski, he mentioned that the pocket park is going in with phase 3. But there's also avenues when the last time they've done public art, I'll call it, in town, when they did the horses, I believe they had fundraisers for it. So I would have no problem moving that down, but I would like to see, I think Jeff brought it up, somehow we think about the number of approximately $50,000 going to the arts in some shape or form.
Right. Okay. Town building accessibility.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, I was not here. This was the meeting I wasn't here for, but, granting access to those that are handicapped, getting into public spaces and health spaces is certainly an allowable within the, and I think certainly necessary within the parameters of the grant.
Yeah.
So, if anything, I'd like to see that up, but there's so many above it that are worthy as well. So we'll have to see how that falls.
I think that one's absolutely very important, and I think that we should definitely leave it where it is. But I wonder if there are any like ADA grants that the town could use that are made publicly available that would also cover the cost of any modifications to a building.
That I do not know.
Colette,
Yes.
I'm wondering too, and I had thought about this, that the accessibility for handicapped people is, for want of a better term, legislated or mandated. Towns, I don't know, have a choice, don't have a choice of doing it or not doing it. So in thinking about this, I'm a little confused why we would allocate funding for it when the town is obligated to do it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Well, in some cases, I know it's grandfathered in, and Bob, I don't know if you can help me being on the library commission, but I know like with the library, there's in some way it's the previous code is grandfathered in, or I'm forgetting the reason why it wasn't necessary to fully make that accessible. Do you remember?
Well, what was in this proposal? It was done before I joined this group. So what was the nature of this 119,000?
The nature of the proposal was to increase the accessibility in certain town areas. There was like a parking lot with the police department, the library. Some of it was just parking lots and some of it was improving the actual door access.
So there may be two pieces. I don't remember offhand, but one is that it could be just about making things accessible beyond what is required by the law. That's one possibility, I suppose. And then the other possibility is it could just be places where we are in fact out of compliance.
Right. Okay. If you give me a sec, I'm gonna pull up. what I have here and
A lot
see
of it
if I
was for handles, faucets, to make life easier for anybody who's handicapped.
Yeah, so the ADA stuff usually is when you're making a change to the building, you have to make it ADA.
Right, you have to bring it up to code.
You have to
Right.
bring up the code in effect. And so some things are grandfathered, but you may want to do them anyhow, right? Because it's a good
Right.
thing to do.
Or go beyond what's required.
Anything is grandfathered in ADA. It
All right.
comes down to if a member of the public who has a handicap files a complaint with the federal government that we're not in compliance, the community is on the hook for the damages arising from that.
Okay.
So communities typically are chipping away at increasing that in the hopes that if they ever are in that position, we can say, hey, listen, we allocate this amount every year. We're trying to catch up. But for any community to be millions and millions of dollars to be completely in compliance in every town building.
Right. So they're working to minimize risk in effect.
Okay, so
Okay,
pulling it up.
Colette? Oh, I have it up. If you have it, go ahead.
Yeah, hold on. I have it up as well. But it's really just the town hall. It's mainly bathroom, automatic, flushers, paper towel dispensers, a van accessible parking space, raising the handicap parking stops or signs and doorknobs. Library, it's and this is one of the largest expenses is the installation of a handicap bathroom in the basement. Van accessible parking space, improvement of the handicap ramp. And then the police department is the van accessible parking space and automatic door openers, and then improvements into the bathroom as well.
So it's not a safety issue per se, it's a convenience issue.
Well, it's making things more accessible to those that are handicapped, yes.
Yeah, the van parking, it needs bigger space in effect, right?
Right.
So, and the and bathrooms are, you know, they are what they are, that, you know, it's different handicap needs or different handicap needs, and there's pretty
Right.
good standards for those. So I think this one ought to stay on the list where it is. It's not way up on the hot top, but it's a good thing to do in my mind. So
I agree.
All right. Hold on a minute. Let me get this. Okay. So we'll leave that as it is. Food pantry expansion.
Yes.
I know where it is.
yep.
Okay. Student enrollment study.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep, I'm good where it is.
Senior center activities patio.
Yes.
yes,
Yes.
Craft center.
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
the 200,000 that you have there is for the number one priority, I believe, because that was 200,000. But I'm not sure that we can put money towards that, or use, because that was debt retirement. That was the number one.
That was to
And-
retire the debt. You're right. That is to retire the debt, which is not an allowable. My thought with this,
As I read the thing, apparently for nonprofits, you can retire debt, but it's only debt that's been incurred since the pandemic.
so that's how I read it as well. There's a few different things we could do with this. We could just give them that money to apply it in whatever way they see fit with the projects they have. You can also just give the money to the nonprofits to use for their operating expenses. If they have that excessive money to use to their operating expenses, then they would be able to use other money to retire the debt. My thought with that. But Jeff, you can tell me your interpretation of that.
No, I think that's right. I have this. He's got 2, 4, 6. There are 8 listings and priorities, And some of them are more expensive and some are less. In total, they're probably over $1 million. So I think 200,000 would certainly be very helpful to them.
That would be my thought. Other people's opinion?
Well, I would agree that Steve does need quite a bit of money. And as to dictating what it should go for, I think it's beyond our scope. I think give him the money and let him deal with their needs. I do disagree on the $1.5 million for the food pantry. I think that's exorbitant. It's almost 1/3 of the total that is available. And if you go with the 3.1, that's half of the budget. And I think it's a facility type of an issue that has nothing to do with helping the needy. Okay, it has to do with making it easy for the volunteers and not focusing the resources on where the money is needed. And I think whoever made that request needs to rethink their priorities. So I think it should be ranked lower.
I guess part of the reason why I was okay with it was, I'm not sure I agree entirely with your assessment of it not helping people in need, but
1.5 million, how many meals can you buy for that, Ray?
yeah, I understand what you're saying, but what I was going to say is I'm okay with where it is on the list. It's pretty far down, actually.
Well, it should be lower.
Okay.
I was actually trying to find it in the proposals and I'm struggling to find it, but wasn't there two parts to that one originally?
It was the social services proposal and it had 4 parts. It had the behavioral health management, the food pantry expansion, the senior center patio, and the resource person. So it was a 4-part proposal from social services.
And I believe the facility was 1.1 million. That's just off the top of my head. Don't quote me, but it was a very large number.
1.5. Let me get the screen here again.
1 to
total
1.5 is what they listed.
Are we able to split that into 2 proposals, one being for the facility and the other being for their general expenses, and decide where they go accordingly? Or
That was all for expansion. That wasn't for general expenses.
okay.
Colette,
Yes.
No plans and specs.
if we look at the overall score, this proposal, there was only one lower than that.
Yeah,
I mean,
agreed.
it's in the cellar to begin with. I don't know why we're talking about pushing it further into the cellar. As I said, there's only one other that's lower, and that's the whatever it is, the Social Services Resource Center at 20.
I see it as a 5.9. COVID-19 score is 5.9. That's middle.
No, that's on one scale, but you got to look at the aggregate score.
Yeah, I mean, compared to the things that were marked priority 1, 5.5 is fairly low. And then the next number for total score is fairly low. And then the P1, 2, and 3, the majority of people voted for 3. So I hear what you're saying, Henry. And if I recall the discussion that day, I think a lot of folks brought up issues with the scope of that cost. I'm with you, Henry. I think it sounded like it could go down a little bit further.
What do people think about that?
I don't understand what you mean about a little bit further.
Like,
Okay.
if we're going to ultimately present high priorities and then other considerations, I don't think it should be anywhere near the high priority based on all of what everybody voted on already in 3 different discussions.
But that's what this rating sheet says. I mean, for God's sakes, there's only one other proposal out of 24 that's lower than this one. It's the second from the bottom.
So
I
why
mean-
isn't it the second from the bottom on this list is what I'm
Okay.
asking.
This list that I put forth was ranking it's top to bottom solely on addresses COVID-19 score. It's not on the total score and it's not on the ranking. So therefore, if we're looking at an aggregate of how we rated it, the total score and the addresses COVID, they can go up and down, which is why, based on this list, we're discussing whether we should put them higher or lower. So this one has it as 15th. What Henry and Jen are saying is that it should probably go lower.
Based on what we've already discussed is
Yes.
how I'm seeing it, not on
Yes.
any new opinions.
Right, exactly.
Uh,
So,
Colette, you've got me totally confused, and that's not too hard to do. You're saying now that on the far right, okay? On the far right, the numbers 1 through 24 are the rankings.
Okay.
Rankings by COVID score.
That's a question.
the ones that are saying rated 1, 2, 3, the last 3 columns to the right are what we voted during our last meeting.
I understand that. That wasn't my question.
Okay.
My question is, you just said that we should move it in the right-hand column, which is 1 through 24. That is not a ranking column. And I think you're trying to make it that. It's not that.
No.
But why would you
I'm
then
suggesting-
move it,
Okay.
any proposal on that particular list? That doesn't make any sense.
Are you seeing the list
Absolutely.
I'm seeing? That
Ah,
I said the list that I have sharing the screen right now. This is the list here that we're discussing where it should be moved up and down.
Up and down where? On the right-hand column?
On the
Yeah.
to the left, just how no.
On
How
the
how
left.
they are itemized here on the left, whether it goes up or whether it goes down.
Okay, I would like you someday to convince me that makes any sense. The rankings are over in the columns to the right, which is mathematical.
Well,
You don't move things up and down on the basis of commentaries.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Colette. This
Of where we evaluated them.
but we evaluated them on all of these scores. This is 3 different ways we evaluated these grants. So you're saying to do it just on the last one, which in all honesty was mathematical, but subjectively mathematical, because we all put in our opinion as to where it was.
Colette, can I say where I think that the disconnect is happening here?
Sure.
And what Frank is under the impression, and I don't know if it's the right impression or the wrong impression. I think it's the wrong impression. He's under the impression that the list all the way on the left, 1 through 24, is just some random listing, and that it's not a ranking. That somehow the Brookfield FD is at the top of the list, not because of any other particular reason other than you listed it there. And that's why I asked before what you answered, because I asked, how is this list sorted? And I believe you said the list is sorted by the COVID score. So we're talking about column C.
If you look at C, it starts with 10 and goes down to
Right.
1.4.
Right.
Right.
So the list is not random, Frank. It's listed, it's prioritized according to column C right now.
Uh-huh.
That's the way this list of 24 is listed. So
Uh-huh.
that's the overall COVID score. That's how we list it. So now the discussion is whether or not we should go with the priority as listed by the COVID score, or if we should make adjustments based on other factors, including the scores that we put in columns D, E, F, and G.
Uh-huh,
If we were to sort by one of those other columns, they would, these things would change positions,
right,
right? So if we were to sort by column D, the total score, which was distinctly separate from the COVID score,
right.
okay, we would get a different list. Although you could see there's a lot of correlation, there's definitely some differences.
Right, right. But, oh, okay, now I understand what you're saying, but isn't that putting a weighting on the COVID score that perhaps is really disproportionate to the overall scoring mechanism?
I think it's a fair question.
Yes, which is why I put this up here saying this is not a compiled. I had to rank them somehow. I had to start with the listing somehow. I chose the COVID score. I could have easily chose the total score or the rating here, which is why we're having this discussion as to where we want to sift and sort these numbers. That's the whole purpose of the discussion we're having now.
And Colette, correct me if I'm wrong, but this list mimics very closely a linear representation of the scatter graph, correct?
Right here.
Right. So it most accurately captures all three of those because the COVID score did carry a lot of things up to that top right corner.
Yes. So talking about the food pantry, that's right here. If you can all see what I'm pointing at. So what else were we discussing should be moved up or down? The accessibility, that one is right here. So no, it's not unfair. I mean, I guess you could say this one right here is unfairly giving weight to this, which is why I'm having this whole discussion, because sooner or later we have to, I have to sort it by one of these. And so that is just what I chose to sort it by. I could have, you know, I can, I guess, go and sort it by column E or column D as well.
Why not?
In my
Why
opinion,
not by the total score? Why not by the total score?
We could. I mean, it's
In your thinking, why not by the total score? Why focus on the 10-point scale and in terms of ranking and ignore the 50-point scale?
I wasn't ignoring any of them, which is why we're having this discussion.
No. You're not answering my question.
You're saying why did I choose the COVID score?
Yes.
Because to me, it seemed like we're talking about the ARPA funds and addressing COVID. But I could easily put it and rank it by one of the others. I mean, if you want me to, I can.
But again, why not by the total score? Which seems
because that's then from that opinion, Frank, it would be just as arbitrary. There are two different rankings. If you think the COVID score is arbitrary, then the total score is arbitrary too. What we're trying to do is bring all three together. And the scatter graph shows that, and this is the closest representation we have of that. And what I'm trying to say, and what I think Henry was saying, and I want to put words in his mouth, was that the food pantry item, the original scores, when we went back to it the third time in the last meeting and ranked them, it sort of dropped in priority in everyone's mind. And there was only one vote to be a top priority, which is why I'm suggesting as time went by and we all did an evaluation over many months, that one should drop at this point. That's my opinion. That's all. That's what I'm trying to explain.
Well, and I think the other consideration there that Henry mentioned, I think it's a fair point as well, is, you know, it's pretty low on the priorities. And like, if you look at the scattergram and even on this list of the COVID list, it's in the lower half for sure. And yet it's a lot of money. You know, it's a big percentage of the money. So, you know, I think that's a fair point.
So let's put it to drop lower.
Math is right. that one item is higher than the top 5 items on the list we have now.
I'm
You
sorry,
mean in
repeat that
terms of
again.
the dollar amount, you mean, Jerry, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
The dollar
Yeah.
on that one project is higher than the top 5 combined.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, student enrollment study.
I would not move it. Of course, I'm going to say that about the entire list.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I said I would not move it, but of course, I'm going to say that about the entire list because I'm comfortable with the tool.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm okay where it is.
And I think it should remain.
all right. Senior center activities patio.
I'm fine with it where it is.
I'm okay with where it is.
Yeah, that's fine.
Craft center.
Same for me.
Same.
Good.
Yeah, and
Playhouse.
that's fine.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, me too.
Mosaic.
I would move it down. Not that I'm opposed to having the mosaic. I think it's a neat idea, but I just, as I said earlier, I think that things that are more aesthetic should probably be weighted lower.
Well, it's interesting that that and the sculpture are so far apart on the list, right? The Pocket Park sculpture. How did they end
Well,
up?
one of the differences, the Greenway mosaic was iffy as to price, and now we find out it's even iffy as to permission.
Right.
I would agree with lowering it.
Other thoughts?
I would only, I can't remember who made the point that, you know, I think we all agreed to make that 2% or 1%, whatever it was for the arts, as long as there's something on here that related to the arts that we're recommending.
It's a craft center.
Craft center, okay,
And the playhouse.
okay. Yeah, then yeah, that's fine with me too.
Right. Resource center.
If anything, that should probably be moved up in light of the email that you sent out.
Yeah. About job assistance and
Yes. And since
Yeah.
it's such a low amount of money, you know, maybe that's one that would actually get funded. Who knows?
I agree with that.
Yeah, that's fair. We can move it up.
all right. Museum and Historical Society.
To the right place.
I'm good.
Fine to me.
See that moved up also, but that's just my personal opinion.
What do others think? Right place or,
I'm fine with
Yeah.
it where it's at.
okay. Water quality?
I think the last two should be moved way up, but that's just me. I think those are things that directly really affect the town, even though they have very low COVID scores.
They do score pretty high. If we were to sort by column D, these would both move up a bit, wouldn't they?
They would. Okay, now I'm trying to remember, where's my sort button on here? Someone who does sheets. I usually do Excel and not sheets. So I'm trying to figure out where I'm sorting.
Could I help maybe a little bit, Colette?
Sure.
Can I share?
Hold on, let me go back into the,
What I just did while we were talking is I used the rank function in Excel and I did the rankings for each of the 3 score columns so we could see them, right?
right.
The first ranking on the COVID score, the second ranking on the total score, and the third ranking kind of I figured out it was 1.00 for every, on, if everyone said it was a priority one, it was half and half, it was 1.5. I figured out the math of, doing that, and then I ranked that. So I have
You've been
3 different
busy.
rank columns.
Yeah.
So
Okay, Allison, would you mind?
Now we know why he was quiet.
Yeah.
I've been quiet. That's exactly right. So.
Okay, Allison, did you allow? Yeah, you did. Thank you.
Okay, so now, so what you see here is this is the same items in the same order we had before. This is the rank on the COVID score. It should be in the same order, right? 1 through 24, because that's how you had ranked it, and it does look that way. This is then the ranking on the total score, right? And you can see there's up and down, right? And then this is the ranking on the 1, 2, and 3 scores, where, we rated them 1, 2, and 3. And then what I did was I calculated, here's the average rank, right, of all of the 3 of those. So if you kind of go down this average rank, we definitely all put the fire department right on the top. It was the first ranked of all 3 different ways you can measure it. So if you go down, I'm sorry, there's a question?
No,
okay,
you're good.
So if these were in rank order based on the list, you would say, they're in the order, the order is kind of matching, what we all kind of done and all the different ways we did it. And they kind of are, right? This one, the resident grant program would have moved up ahead of the fire department. You can see it's 6.33, which is kind of consistent with what we were talking about, if you think about it. This one, I'm sorry, this one probably should have been, this one also highlighted, right? That one probably should have gone up. This one should have gone up, right, in the scheme. And that's kind of what we were talking about.
So Bob, can you sort highest to lowest with M?
Sure.
Or L.
No, it's a column M, which was the average rank.
Let's start with, I can sort it all, real fast anyhow. So we'll just data sort on column M. Oh, it's average rank is what I called it. From smallest to largest. Okay. So this would then do it in the average ranking order, based on what we did. So it would put fire department first, then the small business grants. We all agreed on that. And I think this behavioral health was the third. Then the YMCA would have moved up. YMCA, the library would have been a little higher, the resident grant higher, and then the stipends.
The rooftop AC, the next one, number 9, moved up, I think, a bit compared to that first list.
Yeah, no, it's still 9th in both cases.
It was 9th in both cases. Oh yeah.
Well, you
okay.
can see here's the 9th. The one I've got highlighted.
Okay.
That's the original COVID rank, so it's 9th.
I got you.
So.
Yep.
Then the Greenway, then the building condition study, then the public health nurse dropped a little bit. This one's about the same, 13 and 13. The enrollment study moved a little bit. The pocket park sculpture dropped. The water quality improvement got better from 22 up to 16. The Brookfield Playhouse, it's about the same, give or take. Same with the senior center went down a little bit. Food pantry dropped notably from 14 down to 19. The craft center still about where it was, a little lower actually. And then the mosaic is low. Okay. So this kind of combines all the rankings we did.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bob.
How about sorting by L? Rank 1, 2, 3.
So let me do, so you want to look at the L. So we can just gander it. So 1 would be fire departments, 2 would be behavioral health case management, 3, you'd bring the resident grants up. 4 was the YMCA a membership stipend. Still a membership stipend. Then 5 is the small business grants. 6 is the library. So while they're in a different order, the top 6 are all the same. They're just in a slightly different order. The stipends were 7. So what dropped was the health department public nurse dropped.
Yeah.
Ranking.
Yeah, I think this is spot on, Bob.
I
and
think the rating in column M, the rankings would be what should be what we go forward with.
Nice work.
I would want to tune this because the ranking tool doesn't do a good job with ties. So there's a couple of these that I'll have to figure out how to handle ties. But I could tune this up and send it to everybody. But it's not going to change the results that much. So
Bob, I should have had you do this from the beginning. Thank you very much.
Okay.
This is great.
Yep.
I will actually, though, just based on our discussion, talk about tweaking things a little bit as well. I mean, we talked about, can you scroll it down a little bit, Bob?
Yeah.
Either that or enlarge it. Thank you. We talked about, in light of what we heard from the Social Services Resource Center, moving that up. We talked about that the craft center should probably be more important than the food pantry expansion, and we talked about moving that down. What other one?
Oh, what happened? Hold on a second. I got to reshare. I'm sorry. There you go.
And then we were at this point discussing the last 2, I think, the water quality, which actually moved up considerably, but then the sewer for the Brookfield market.
It was ranked pretty low on all 3 measures.
Yeah. Okay, and what tweaks do people think should happen with this, if any?
Well, I think this is absolutely a completely rational approach.
I think it's great.
I'm very comfortable with this.
Okay,
And the order makes sense to me too.
yeah. Bob, could you either scroll up or enlarge the screen? I'm not sure which
I
one.
was trying to hold on a second. Let me see if I can figure it out. The problem is the stop share button that's up here is right on top of the Zoom. There you go. Now I can get it. That's why it unshared there for a second.
Okay.
There you go. Now now you can see them all at once.
Thank you, Bob. This is great.
Yep.
All right, so you all are good with this?
Yep.
Yep.
All right.
Yes.
So we present this, although it is in excess of $5 million. But what we can say, my thought is, the $5 million numbers actually become a bit arbitrary with the lost revenue allowance. So what we did is we took all proposals that we thought were viable to move forward, and we ranked them. This is the ones that we, X amount or so-and-so are the ones that we highly suggest.
So where would we, so I'll say it in my words. There's a featured group, right? This is our overall ranking. They're all on the list, right? So that's what it is. But we as as an organization would like to feature that as you're making your decisions, you definitely would like to include these. And I call it put the big star on it, right? So to me, you'd go down this list and you'd say, where are our highest priorities? And I just think about that groupings of where we all rank them number 1 is that group. The only one that's not in the top 8, it takes you down to there. And then there's this health department public nurse that kind of came in a little lower, but it was our number 7 item. So, you know, if you wanted to go there, or we could say, here's the top 12, right? Because that is well, here's the top 12. We could feature that group as the top 12. And they're in the, you can argue what order they're in, but they're all the top 12 are right there.
Like that.
What do you guys think about featuring that subset there?
Yeah, I think 12 is a good figure to use. I mean, 10 is, I mean, typically people would say top 10, but it's somewhat arbitrary in this case.
The only reason I didn't say the top 10 is because you get if you look at these numbers, every one of these is kind of 1 through 12. And over here, we had only one of them there, number 20 slipped up in the total rank.
Yeah.
But other than that, that grouping's pretty clean.
Yeah.
Does anyone have a total figure on those top 12 for cost?
Here, I'm doing it. One of the things that's nice about Excel is you can highlight that, and the totals down there, 2.4 million.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's reasonable, and I think that shows the work that we did with a reasonable number.
Yep. I think that's great.
This is perfect.
I think I'd like to see added to it somehow, and I don't know how you would group this, is that we really, I think the town should be aware that we really do want to see the 1% going to the arts, some shape or form.
And of this list, where are the arts ones?
And that's, it's not a perfect world, you know, I mean, you could say it's the museum, the historical society, it's the Brookfield Playhouse. You could say it's the craft center between those three.
But it's none of the ones in the top 12, right?
Without a doubt, correct.
And a little bit of a reach, you could say, the library, but the things they asked for weren't really art related.
So this one's kind of arts, that's arts right there, right?
And the craft center.
And that's the art. Well, you can keep.
And the historical, the museum and the historical society. But then that adds up, you know, that now you're talking over $300,000, I think.
Yeah, but you got, so, you know, what you could do is just do those as a separate feature, right? That says, look, here's our top 12. We also feel that we ought to do something with the arts, and here's the next 4, right? You know, that they're not in the top 12, but they ought to be strongly considered, right? But just because they're the arts. I mean, it's just a matter of packaging how you present it. But we're presenting them all.
If you do the top 12 and then add the arts piece, that's still 2.7 million. So we're still well under 3.
Yeah.
Why don't we do that?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
What are everyone's thoughts? So
Just so all of the arts can be considered, we might as well highlight the mosaic as well.
Where is that? Oh, there
No,
it is.
21.
I knew there was a 4th one I was looking for, and there it is. So
yeah, so I can put forth one of those to highlight that. All right. So I think we've got, you know, we're actually just segued to the second bullet point of our thing is the discussion format. You know, we present all of the grants, say, you know, in light of the changes in the lost revenue format, we thought we'd bring forth all of them, but these top 12 are the ones that were strongly vetted and strongly rated high in all of our methodology that we used. These are definitely the ones we recommend, although we do recommend 1% going to the arts. Here are 4 arts proposals. Fair enough?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is great.
It is. Thank you, Bob, very much for doing that.
it's funny, I had just done a project on Excel and I taught myself the rank function, and I said, I can use the rank function on this.
I wish you would have raised your hand about 45 minutes ago, but I'm glad you did it.
Well, I was busy doing the rank function.
Okay, so before we go any further into discussion of the presentation, I think we need to, as a committee, vote to bring forth the proposal recommendation as rated in the chart that we all see before us right now that Bob Belden has presented. So I will make that a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second.
Okay, we've got Jeff seconding. Bob, can you take that off for a minute so Allison can see everybody for this vote, please?
Done.
Thank you. So, and because this is an official vote, we have to have we can't have the ex officio members on the vote, but we do appreciate your input into it very much. So all of those in favor of the proposal recommendations as stated, please raise your hand.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you, guys. All right, so now we go to format for the presentation at the Board of Selectmen meeting. I've been playing around with the presentation for a little bit because we will have people there who have not been following the ARPA funds. We may have people making decisions on the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance that have not followed this. So I would like to start with a brief overview like we did during the public forum. Exactly what are the ARPA funds? What are the allowables? What are the, the non-allowables? How this committee was formed, what our charges were. I have a chart as to the process that what we've been doing the last 6 months, our actions over the last 6 months. And then I was going to go into the proposals. Obviously, the 12 that we recommend the most, I will go in further detail, but I will show the charts and the methodology that we used for each of it. I was going to show some of the survey results because I think that's important, to value the information that we've collected and use that as well. And then go into the proposals. Does anybody have any thought as to that process?
Will the committee see that before in draft form?
What I would like to do, that was going to be my next thing, is if you're all okay with that, I will spend the next probably a couple of days. I'd like to get that done at least by the end of this weekend. Give it to you all for your thoughts, and then we'll have it all set for the meeting on the 7th.
Works for me.
Sounds
Uh-huh.
So
great.
what cutoff point are you presenting? Are you presenting 3.1 or 5?
Well, if we present everything as we have it on the chart, we will actually be a little bit over our 5,026,000. It's at like 5 million. What did I say? 183,000.
That's 553, but you ought to add in something for the two where there's estimated amounts, and we'll have to figure out how to do that, but because it doesn't automatically add, but I think we ought to show the whole list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I can do is you can take off the estimated where it is and just put estimated in, in parentheses in the
I'll fix the spreadsheet for you.
Yeah,
I'll fix the
but
spreadsheet.
if you take the grant under the grant name of the proposal name and put estimated next to that, it'll take it off and figure it into the amount. So to answer your question, Henry, we're over the 5 million, but the ones that we highly recommend as our top 12 come in at, what did we say, 2.4, which is
Yep.
neither of those numbers, but very realistically, the 3.1 is an arbitrary number right now because we're using the old premise that there would only be $1.9 million of lost revenue. And now literally the entire grant can be used as lost revenue.
So I think the 3.1 should include all the items that qualify or would be our highest recommended items that come up to 3.1. Everything else would be the 2 or 3 list.
Right. But I guess what I'm saying is that the 3.1 is a very arbitrary number right now. It was the number we worked forth going to now, but with the final rule and the rulings, the 3.1 is a moot point. It's not a number that is a watermark anymore. If that makes sense.
So we're no longer putting all of this into three categories. We're putting this into just recommended and everything else.
These are the, well, that's pretty much what we had just, discussed and voted on, that these are all of the proposals that we felt merited evaluating, because we had several that we didn't evaluate. These are proposals that we felt merited evaluating. The ones that we highly recommend are these top 12. Although we do ask that you give consideration in the form of at least 1% to the arts. And these are the 4 proposals that would fall in that category.
$1 of the 5 million.
That, and again, that is what has been recommended by arts commissions nationwide. Actually, they had a push to put 1% of the total funding. So yes, it'd be about $50,000.
Yeah.
Which means you could pick up 1 or 2 of those.
Yeah. Bob, would you mind sharing or sending that spreadsheet to me?
Yes.
Thank you. I
will,
appreciate that. And I
what
appreciate.
I'm doing is just doing a little cleanup. By the way, the total adds up to, I just did what you suggested. The total on the list is $5.3 million. And just like we had talked about before, it's, you get down to just before the food pantry expansion, and it's 2.7, but the food pantry expansion drives it way up to 4 point something. So it's kind of that that's getting to 3.1 as a specific number. You end up somewhere in the 2s is where you end up.
Yeah.
So Bob, the total of the 12 that we're recommending comes out to what, 2.4?
2.368.
Colette, just for like a visual emphasis, will you list those 12 like separately first and then list the whole list together?
I was thinking of doing the whole list together and then bringing out the 12 and going through them one by one, maybe even a slide for each, or, or just a slide just of the 12. So those can be focused on.
Yeah, I don't know that I have an opinion on the order, but I think it would be important to pull the 12 out that we're highly recommending, just so they're together alone on a slide that specifically says that,
Yes. No, I that was my thought.
Yeah.
Just so they can focus on those. Any other thoughts about the presentation? Because if not, I can start to get to work on that. I think, it might be, I'm trying not to make it too long, but I think it's very, very important to hit a home run with this one and explain the rationale and really, give good defense as to why we think, why we came up with the ones we did, number one, and why we think these are the best. And we're also probably informing a lot of people that might be making decisions as to the uses of the ARPA funds in the first place. So I think that's important as well.
So Colette, the only suggestion I would make is that there will be people who say, just put it all to the town general fund, right? I know that they're out there. I think our town controller is one of them. I think there's certain members of the Board of Finance who are saying, okay, well, let's go do that.
Zero tax increase.
I think we have to say, we strongly recommend you take some of that money for these good causes, right? So you almost have to say, I know that the new rules say you could put it all to the general fund. We don't think that's a good idea.
Right. Technically, it can't go in the general fund.
No, I
because
understand. I'll put it,
Operating expenses.
it's a revenue, it's a revenue offset effectively,
Right,
so.
right, because it's one of the non-allowables is putting it in what's called the rainy day fund, which is our general fund. But it's the operating expenses, which is technically,
Okay, I got it, but the point is, we know you have a lot more leeway on what your decisions are. We strongly recommend you take a good chunk of this to run programs, right? You know, and fund some of these items.
And because we believe these are, and I don't think this is hyperbole, we believe these are vital to the community.
Yep.
The top 12, we think are going to be not only a tremendous asset to the community, but in some cases essential to recovery.
And if you're willing to take all of it toward these programs, here's the rank order list, right? Because, they're all good. We didn't find a bad one. It's all about priorities.
Right.
Yeah, and I think a point too, and it's just emphasis really, that these recommendations reflect the wants, needs, and the expectations of the community. That's a big sell point.
But they do mirror very closely with the survey results.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It reflects the needs, wants, and expectations of the community.
Right. Jerry, I think you're on mute.
Yep, I was. Are you going to have some information about the path we took to develop the tool and how the tool was applied to each of these as part of the presentation before you show them the kind of ranking so they know where it's coming from?
I'm geek enough that I planned on doing it.
I wonder if we could also highlight.
Comes out. I'm sorry.
Oh no, it's okay. I was wondering if we could also highlight a statistical correlation between the survey results and our determination on how everything should be allocated. I'd have to look at the spreadsheet to see how we would structure that, but if we could demonstrate like a statistical correlation between the two, that would give it more, that would give more weight to our decision from
validity,
the board of selectmen's perspective.
I can send those to both of you and see what you think.
Okay, thank you.
And I don't know if you were planning to do this either, Colette, but I think it would be great to talk about the wide swath of people on this committee and the nonpartisan nature, et cetera. I think would be helpful.
I agree.
Might be able to use the fact that the area towns, just thinking of New Milford and Bethel, had already spent some of their ARPA funds, and that, sure, the town can put it all in and take the whole pot of gold, but it sort of almost goes against, I think, what the funds were intended for. I think it'd be a mistake, at least in my mind, for the town to do that without saying they are going to fund some of those programs. That's my personal opinion.
I agree with that.
We definitely need to make our case. Yes, and so I like that. Okay. Thank you. Those are all, I took all of those into consideration. So the spreadsheet that I will, or the Google slide deck I'll send you, will have it. And then I'll also put notations in the bottom so you can see the points that I would talk to for that, which will be a lot of what you had just said. Okay. Any other items on the presentation? February 7th, please show up either in person or virtually with, if you'd like, it'd be great to have a showing there. And we'll see how it goes from there. Let's see. Next is public comment. We don't have anyone from the public here. Nope. So I did want to take this moment, if this is our last meeting, to thank each and every one of you. It has been an absolute pleasure and honor to work with you all. Such an incredible, hard working bunch of people. And it's really been a pleasure working with you. And thank you all so much for all of the time, dedication, hours spent, poring over all of the proposals and documentation, and it is so appreciated.
Thank you,
We
Colette.
appreciate all the work that you have done.
Absolutely.
It's been great working with you all. I would relish the chance to work with each and every one of you again in any other format. So I will get that the slide deck out to you all as soon as I can, and I would appreciate any feedback we get on that.
Wonderful.
Okay. Anything else to be brought forth the board?
I was just going to say thank you, everyone, as well. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise.
Yes.
Ditto.
Okay, then, without any objection, meeting is adjourned. Thank you all so very much. Have a great
Thank
evening.
you.
Thank
Yep.
Good night, everyone.
Night.
Right.
Night.
All right.
Night.